Hello, welcome back. In this video, we are going to see about origins, pivot points, and also we will see about the 3D cursor. First of all, the 3D cursor is nothing but the circle which you are going to see in the center of the origin. So this is called as a 3D cursor. So let me explain. So first of all, we'll see about the pivot points. So let's say I will duplicate these objects. So I will press Shift D and I will move in the X-axis. And again, I will duplicate one more time, X. And also, like suppose if I press again Shift D, so X. Let's I will select these objects and I will press R and I will rotate. See, now it is rotating based on the center point of all the selected objects here. So see, this is a center point of all the objects which we have selected. So if I press R and rotate, it will rotate based on that point. Suppose if you want to rotate these objects based on its own pivot point. So what we need to do is we need to come here. There is an option transform pivot point. So here if you open these options, so here at present defaultly it is in the median point, which means it is rotating based on the center point. Suppose if you want to rotate on its own individual pivot point, here we have to select the option individual origins. So if you select this and now if I press R, so see now the cubes are rotating around its own pivot point. So I will delete this. Now we'll see how it will work when we are in the edit mode. So let's say suppose if I select this cube and just I will make a scale. And now I'll go to the edit mode and press tab. And also I will go back to like medium point here. And now I will go to the face mode, select all the faces. And what I will do is first I will insert. So I will press I and again press I so that it will insert individual faces. So I will insert. Now again I will extrude. So if I press E, so see now it's extruding on its local axis. So as I explained in the previous videos, if you want to extrude these faces to the individual directions, we have to press Alt E. And now here we have to select this option like extrude along the normal faces. So select this and now we can extrude. Okay. And now what the thing is, suppose if I scale these faces, let's say. So if I scale this, so if I press S and if I scale, see now it's scaling based on the center of this origin. So when you use the scale option, so it's scaling based on this center point here. But what the thing is, I want to scale it based on the individual pivot point. So what the thing is, so I will just deselect, left click, and now here I will go to individual origins. Now if I use the scale, see now it's scaling only on the based on that selected pivot point here. So if I use this median origin, then the total faces are scaling and it is also like changing the size of the object. And now if I select this individual origin, then if I scale, see now it's not changing the size, but only it's changing only the size of the faces here. So in this way we can use these options. So if you want to scale based on the center point, we have to select this median point, and if you want to scale based on the original pivot point, then we have to select these individual origins. And also it will affect on the rotations too. For example, see if I control Z, now let's say I will put it to medium point, and now if I rotate, so if I want to rotate we can press R. Now see, so these faces are rotating based on the center of this object here. So suppose if I control Z and if I go to individual origins and if I rotate, see now it's rotating based on its own pivot point. And now we'll see about the 3D cursor, because by using the 3D cursor, we can set the positions of the pivot point and we can scale from the particular direction. So I will delete this object. So I will go to the object mode and select this object. And now I will, what we select, I will create the new object. So Shift A and I will create the cube. So see now the cube has been created from the center of the origin because the position of this 3D cursor is in the center. And also 3D cursor is used in other ways too, like suppose if you want to snap the objects to one each other, so we can use the 3D cursor. And also if you want to change the positions of the pivot point, we can do that. And see now, for example, suppose if I move this object, so I move here And now see, still the 3D cursor is in the center of the origin. So for suppose if you create any new object, let's say if I press Shift A and if I create any like plane or something, see it's creating at the positions of this 3D cursor. So I will delete this. Now for example, suppose if you want to move this 3D cursor, so let's say I will select this object, and now if you press Shift S, okay, you have to hold Shift S. If you release again, it will just hide the menu. So you have to hold Shift S so that you will get this menu. So for this video, we are going to see about this cursor to selected and selected to cursor. So first of all, we'll see about the cursor to selected. So what the thing is, here we have selected this object. That means if you press Shift S and if you select this option, that means like cursor to selected. So this 3D cursor will go and snap to this object here. So if I select this, now see, so the 3D cursor has been snapped to the selected object and it went exactly to the center of this cube here. And now, as I said, like whenever you create a new object, it will create near to the positions of this 3D cursor. So for example, if I press Shift A and if I create any mesh and if I create any like a cone, so see now the cone has been created at the positions of this 3D cursor. And once again, suppose if you move this cube and let's say if I move here and now if you press Shift S and if you select this cursor to selected, then see now again the 3D cursor has been snapped to the center of this object here. So if you create again a new object, so let's say if I go to this torus, so see now it has been created at the center of this 3D cursor. So let's delete this. So I will select this and delete this. Again, suppose if you want to move this cursor to the center of this origin here. So simply we have to press Shift S and we have to select this option cursor to world origin. So that now the 3D cursor will go to the center of this scene here. And also what we can do is like suppose if you want to snap this to any vertex of the object. So as I said, like when we use this Shift S, so if I use this option like cursor to selected, so it will not work only on the object, it will work in on the vertex and edges and faces too. So that means suppose see if I create any cube here, so Shift A and if I press cube and let's say I will scale a little bit. And now I will go to the edit mode, like pressing tab, and I will press 1 so that I can select the vertex. So now what the thing is, see, I have selected this vertex. Now, when I use this option, like press Shift S, and if I use this option cursor to selected, then see now the cursor will snap to this vertex. So for example, suppose if you select this vertex and if you press Shift S and if you select this, then the 3D cursor will snap to this vertex here. And now suppose if I go to the object mode, now see if I create any object, that object going to be create near to the positions of this 3D cursor. So suppose if I press Shift A and suppose let's say if I create any sphere. So if I click sphere, see now the sphere exactly has been snapped to the corner of this cube here. And now we will see how to snap the objects to the cursor point. So let's say suppose if I move this object here, and now what the thing is, now previously we have seen that like we are moving the cursor to the selected object. That means like if I select this object and if I press Shift S and if I use this option, the 3D cursor is going to this location. But instead, what the thing is, I want to move this object exactly to this cursor here. So what we can do is like, so for example, let's I will change this thing like select Shift S. Okay. Now, now what the thing is, let's say suppose if I want to move this object to the positions of this 3D cursor here. So simple thing, just we need to select this object and if you press Shift S and here you can see there is an option selection to cursor. So previously we have seen cursor to selected. That means the cursor is going to snap to the selected object. Now if you select this one, now object will go and snap to the cursor. So if you select this and now you can see, so the selected object is going to snap to the cursor. Now suppose if you want to snap this cursor to the center of this cube, let's say here to this corner here. So as I said, it will snap to vertex, edges and faces. So suppose if I go to this edit mode and if I use this 2, so I can select this edge Now by selecting the edge, and if I use the snapping option like Shift S, and if you select this option, cursor to selected, then now you can see the cursor has been snapped to the center of this edge which we have selected. So even we can move to the face. I will select the face, so I can press 3 so that I can select the face. And now if I Shift S and use this cursor to select it, see now this object, this cursor has been exactly snapped to this selected faces. Now if you create any object, so for example, so if I press Shift A and if I use other cube, so see now exactly it has been created to the center of this face here. So this will be very easy. So if you want to create a hole by using any other object, and if I want to place this object exactly to the center of this face here, we can do this thing. And also if I want to move this sphere exactly to this center here, now we can go to the edit mode and select this, Shift S, and now we can use selection to the cursor. So the see now it has been moved to the center of this object. So if you want to make it visible a little bit outside, we can use G and we can move around the y-axis in this way. So see now it has been created exactly in the center. Now I'll create other cube. So Shift A. So I will create the cube. Now see it has been created at the positions of this 3D cursor. Now what the thing is, see if I rotate this object, now this object is rotating based on its center point. So it doesn't matter on the like 3D cursor. So even though if you move this object, now you can see if I rotate this, so still it is rotating from its center. So now what the thing is, I want to change the pivot point to the positions of the 3D cursor. Let's say suppose if you are going to create any door, okay, for example, so I will scale this. I will scale and I will scale around the x-axis, and also I will scale around the z-axis too. Like I can use S and I can use Z so that I can scale this. Now see, I will move this little bit up. Now what the thing is, I want to change the positions of this pivot point. So what the thing is, actually when we rotate the door has to rotate based on this any one of the corner. So if I rotate now, if I use R and if I use Z to rotate, so see now it is rotating based on the center of this object here. But what the thing is, I want to change the pivot point exactly to the corner. So first what we need to do is we have to place this 3D cursor to the corner of this point here. So what we can do is we can go to the edit mode and I can go to the vertex mode. I can select any one of the vertex, and now let's have a select this two vertex, and now what I will do is I will press Shift S and cursor to select it. So now if I go to the object mode, so still if I rotate, still it's rotating based on the center point. Now what the thing is, see here you can see this is a dot. So this is nothing but the pivot point, the positions of the pivot point. So this pivot point has to move to the cursor, like 3D cursor. So simple thing, we need to select the object and just we need to right click, and there is an option called set origin, and here there is an option called origin to 3D cursor. So we need to select this option so that see now this pivot point has been changed to the positions of the 3D cursor. Now if I rotate, so if I press R and if I press Z, so see now it is rotating based on the positions of this pivot point. And for example, suppose if I change the 3D cursor, let's say I will move this to the y-axis, and now till if I rotate, so it's rotating based on this point. So let's say suppose right click, set origin and origin to 3D cursor. So see now if I rotate, now this will rotate based on the pivot point. So that's it for this video. See you in the next lesson.